want to welcome you to our webinar today. But before we get into the topic, how about I give a little introduction to Zenger Folkman for those of you who aren't familiar with us. So we are pioneers in leadership development. Jack Zenger and Joe Folkman, they bring decades of experience to the table. But what truly sets us apart among all the different firms that offer leadership development is that we are solely focused on this, leadership development and coaching. We're not just another consulting firm, we're research obsessed. And that's why you'll find our work in Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and other leading publications on a weekly basis. So here's what makes us different. We are all about strengths and building strengths. You know, we've been in this industry long enough. We know what doesn't work because we've tried it and we've measured the performance of leaders and we found out what's not working, what is working. And the data keeps pointing us back again and again every year that when leaders focus on their strengths instead of fixating on their weaknesses, something remarkable happens. Leadership development, and it isn't scary anymore. It's not this unpleasant chore. They become energized and passionate about their growth and learning. So today for our agenda, this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to begin by sharing what the top leaders do differently in boosting recognition in their organizations. We're going to talk and give some practical tools for change. We're going to get an inside look from one founder of a company called Dawgs. And we're going to talk about how to make recognition a daily habit. We want you to be able to stay on till the end. We might answer some questions. If there is time, I'll be looking in the chat. So if you have questions for Joe, be sure to put them in the chat. And we might have some time to do some Q&A at the end. And we will have a very special giveaway. So be sure to fill out our survey at the end. All right, introductions. So today, our webinar will be led by Joe Folkman, our resident psychometrician. He's the co-founder and president of Zenger Folkman, and he's globally recognized in leadership and change and psychometrics. He's the one who creates all of our delightful graphs and all that research that we share all the time. So next, we're so lucky to have a guest with us, a guest speaker, and Jayson Edwards. Now, I thought what would be fun in introducing this speaker. I could tell you all of his many accolades, but I wanted to share a story of when I first met Jayson. I was a freshman. I was on a date, my first date in college. I was trying to play it cool, and my date said, "Hey, we're going to go out to dinner." I was like, "This is great. I don't have to pay for food." And he's like, "I'm going to take you to get the best hot dog you'll ever eat." And I smiled because he didn't know that I hate hot dogs. I never liked them. But I went because I wanted to be cool, and I took a bite, and it was sweet and spicy and grilled to perfection and absolutely unforgettable. I did not marry that guy, but I've been loyal to Dawgs ever since because the hot dog is just that good. And behind that magical hot dog is today's speaker, Jayson Edwards. He went from slinging hot dogs on 10 by 10 shack with no floor to turning it into this hot dog empire in Utah. Today, Dawgs has multiple locations, hundreds of employees, and has one of the most loyal fan bases in Utah and beyond. So his journey is as bold as his hot dog special sauce. And today he's here to share it with us. So please welcome Jayson. We're glad to have you. If you want to say hi to everybody on the webinar today.
Well, happy to be here. Sorry things didn't work out with that guy, but I mean, I'm happy for the introduction.
And we already have people in the comments saying how much they love Dawgs. So there you go. Maria is going to be answering our questions on chat. Like I said, we might get to some questions later on, but if during the webinar, Maria might answer some, or we'll email them over to Joe to make sure they get an answer. Maria, anything you want to say?
No, hello and welcome everybody. I look forward to the chatting with you in the boxes. Thanks.
Great. All right. Well, now I will turn the time over to Joe.
Thank you, Bree. And I want you to think back to your sophomore year of college and tell me, is there anything you remember?
No.
That's true for most of us. Now, in my sophomore year, I declared myself a psychology major, right? And after the ribbing and the unpleasant kind of comments I got from people, I signed up for experimental psychology class, and I didn't know what that was, but I came to find out that my grade was going to be based on what I could teach a rat to do. So it was interesting because the experimental psychology class is a lot of research by B.F. Skinner. He became a hero for me. And, Skinner proposed that, learning occurs through consequences followed by reinforcing stimuli, and that strengthens the behaviors, and punishing stimuli are weakened. So I got in the class and I learned a lot of interesting information. So we showed up for our lab and we got to meet our rat, and the rat had been deprived of food. Now that's an important thing because it was really hungry and it would do something for a pellet of food. And you can see the training box there. It's got a feeder pellet that you get. It's got a bar. It's got some lights in it. You can put sounds on and lights. If you really get sophisticated, you can even electrify the grid, which is that's pretty mean. Anyway, the task was to teach your rat to press the bar. And if you wait for a rat to press the bar before you give it some food, the rat will die because it doesn't know what to do, and you need to sort of communicate to it what to do. And the way you do that is by using a process called shaping. And shaping really is the process of rewarding it for specific behaviors. So when the rat's in the cage and it turns towards the bar, you give it a pellet. And then when it takes another step, another pellet. So successive approximations towards a terminal response. That's what shaping is. And I know nobody cares, but that's what I learned. Anyway, what we started to do was we started with fixed reinforcement. And basically, fixed reinforcement says that every time you press the bar, you get some food. Press the bar, get the food, press the bar, you get the food. And what's interesting about fixed reinforcement is the way that you can tell the effectiveness of a reinforcement schedule is you go through a process called extinction. And in extinction, what happens is that you don't give them food anymore, you don't reinforce them anymore, and you see how long the behavior will continue. What's interesting and what I learned a lot about in that class was that fixed reinforcement is not as effective as variable reinforcement. Variable reinforcement doesn't give you the reward every time you do it. You might have to press the bar 3 times to get it, or the rat would, and then 5 times, and then 1 time. So it's variable. But what we learned about variable reinforcement, which is great for us, because not many of us are consistent in what we do, is that it builds very strong, consistent behavior. And that explains why people get really into gambling or something like that, which is a variable reinforcement schedule. So I learned a lot in that class, and I learned a lot about positive reinforcement and how powerful that is at changing behavior. It creates lasting change, it enhances relationship, promotes a positive culture. But a lot of times in organizations, we use negative reinforcement. Negative consequences really triggers emotional responses like fear and anxiety. And behaviors may return once the external force is gone. In other words, when the boss leaves and the boss is negative reinforcement, oftentimes people quit behaving in that way. Corrective actions tend to be highlighted and what not to do instead of the preference for what to do. And the overuse of negative reinforcement can strain relationships between the leader and team members. I'm sure this is all pretty familiar to you. So we'd like to start with this poll. What's your approach to using positive or negative reinforcement? Do you use it most of the time, and use negative consequences only rarely? Equal amounts of time between positive and negative, or mostly negative and some positive? So there's a poll that should pop up for you and indicate, which one of those three that you tend to use the most. All right. Do you see the poll there? Okay. All right. What do you think this is going to show us here? Let's see. So here's the results. It looks like the majority of you, the 71%, use the positive reinforcement, and then about 22% kind of a mix of positive and negative. And, it's interesting. Nobody selected mostly use negative consequences. That would be pretty depressing. So thank you for that. Well, let's look at some data that we've collected on recognition. Now, we looked at a recognition competency. We did this by using a 360 survey. We gathered data from 4,216 leaders. And leaders were assessed by, on average, 9 raters, peers, direct reports, and others. And that's our first study. And we're going to show you the results from that and the effect of positive reinforcement. The second study was 14,000 global participants. And so we're going to show you the results from that. So let me show you this first study. And we looked at those who were in the top 10% on recognition, giving recognition. And this scale was rated from, in terms of getting leaders' effectiveness at recognizing others, compared to the bottom 10%. So the horizontal axis looks at the worst reinforcers or rewarders and the best recognizers. And as you can see there, what we're measuring there is overall leadership effectiveness. Now, if you were terrible at recognition, your leadership effectiveness was at the 10th percentile. And if you were great at recognition, your leadership effectiveness was at the 88th percentile. There's a huge effect. This is larger than most every behavior I've ever seen. This little tiny behavior, this ability to sort of say, good job, boy, you did well. Hey, thanks for that effort. Appreciate you. Those little things make a huge difference. And your ability to recognize others and your propensity to do it really makes a difference. Now, again, B.F. Skinner taught us you don't have to be perfect at doing it every time you see someone. That variable reinforcement schedule really works. But some of us get out of the habit. And we're going to have a phrase here: if you see something, say something, just like at the airport, right? So let me show you some more data here. This is employee engagement, the extent to which employees love their job, they're satisfied, they want to do more, they're willing to put in extra effort. Well, you can see here that the better a leader is at recognizing others, the higher the engagement of their direct reports. This next study shows you the percentage of people that think about quitting. And again, those who don't recognize very often in the bottom 10th percentile, 41% of their employees are thinking about quitting. The great recognizers, only 12% are thinking about quitting. The next study shows you the percentage of people willing to give extra effort, go the extra mile, do extra work. And again, poor recognizers only get 15%. Great recognizers get 58%. So the majority of their direct reports are willing to give extra effort. In the next study, what we looked at was level in the organization. So individual contributors rated at the 67th percentile on their ability and skill at recognizing. But as you see, as you go up in management, you go down in effectiveness at recognition. That's too bad because it's a really powerful trait. But oftentimes the top management aren't recognizing as frequently and as well as the individual contributors. And then if we looked at it by age, you can see that younger employees are at the 75th, first percentile, while older employees at the 61 and over were at the 48th percentile. So as we age, we tend to recognize less frequently and less often. There's no natural reason for that except we become grumpy. When I looked at the effect on individual competencies and capabilities, you can see the difference between the great recognizers and the terrible recognizers, and they're affecting how you give feedback, supporting others' development, inspiring, building relationships, coachability, generating trust, encouraging collaboration, helps others set goals, valuing diversity and inclusion, and listening actively. So every competency is affected by this little skill of recognizing others. Now, this is the second study we did where we're looking at 14,000 participants. What we asked them is, I feel I am recognized and praised too much. And so you can see the scale strongly disagree to strongly agree. Only 8% of the employees feel like there's too much recognition. So the majority of the time, the vast majority, 92% of the time, when you recognize someone, they like it. And that's been my experience in a personal level. Recognition is a great thing to do. And gee, I don't think we do it that often. So why is it so important? Well, the psychological impact, it fills that basic need that I'm okay. Recognition is a remarkably effective motivator. The cultural impact, it creates a positive environment. It reinforces values and builds connections between employees. And business outcomes, leader effectiveness, engagement, turnover, and all those things of productivity are impacted by the extent to which you recognize your employees. So, what do you think? Can a person recognize others too often? Is this is too much bad? Or is it, does that happen too much? What do you think? Can a person recognize too often? Jayson, you weigh in on this. Do you think you can recognize too often?
Maybe the same person in front of other people too often.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you've got a favorite here.
Yeah, that might be problematic.
That could be a little problematic, wouldn't it?
But overall, I would say no. I mean, I totally buy in.
Okay, let's see what they say.
Don't withhold.
Okay. All right. So 61% say yes, and 39% say yes. So the majority kind of believe that. I think there are some cases for it, but I think that fear that you're going to do too much keeps us from doing enough. And I think that's a problem. So Jayson, do you recognize this little building here?
I do.
That's
the heartbeat of my business.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you got started and how the process of building this business went.
Absolutely. Well, as you see there, that's a little 10 by 10 shack just off the southeast side of Brigham Young University's campus. And those are beautiful Wasatch Mountains in the background. And this is the summer of 2004. where I had served a religious mission, a 2-year mission in Toronto, Canada, where they had street carts selling hot dogs on every corner. And we had gotten really used to that kind of that food scene. And when I came to BYU, I felt like it was lacking that. And, I thought about it often. And I had taken a class in the business school, which just kind of inspired me to start my own business, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So one day I was walking home from school and I walked by this 10 by 10 shack, and it just kind of clicked in my brain of that would be a great place for a hot dog stand. Well, I had a little problem. I didn't have any knowledge and I didn't have any money, but I had this old Fender Telecaster electric guitar that I pawned to my dad. And I didn't expect to ever see it ever again. But I came up with $600, and during the day I would go to school, and I had a job on mowing lawns on campus. And then at night I would work on this shack, and 3 or 4 months later, and that $600, I spent every penny of it and a little more to start what would become Dawgs. So that was 21 years ago. I dropped out of school, and it got so busy that I just, started to run with it. And now we have over 20 locations and almost 300 employees. And it all started from that little 10 by 10 shack and some kid's crazy dream.
Well, and that's what it looks like today, which is a really impressive place. And there's a bunch of those around Utah that you've built.
Yeah.
What we know about fast food restaurants, Jayson, is that the turnover is usually 100% a year. That's typical.
Right.
Yours is much lower.
Yeah, it's a little less than half of that. We run at about 10% a quarter, 10 to 12% a quarter. And some of that is attributed to just kind of the nature of the job. It's hot, it's fast paced, often tough work, physical work. And but also just the fact that we employ a lot of college kids, and they stay for quite a while, but then we get, as they graduate, they turn over and they go to other places. But we just pride ourselves on being a great job to start from. So when they go on, I've had so many people come back and say, I had my first interview and with a grown-up job, and they stop and say, tell me about this Dawgs job. And with pride, they relate their experience that they had there. So that's a great feeling.
Now, the atmosphere in your restaurants is different from a typical fast food restaurant, where it tends to be kind of snippy. It's like, yours is kind of fun. It's just, you can feel, a positive atmosphere there. What have you done to generate that kind of feeling in the stores?
That's a good question. I mean, for people that haven't been there, we just kind of like, and these are places that you might not have experienced either, but if it's like if In-N-Out Burger and Trader Joe's had a baby, that's kind of the feel of what it's like, like they're fun and professional, but yet we're going to ask you how your day is, and we're going to maybe rib you a little bit if you walk in with a Yankees hat on or something, but no, we try, when we're hiring people, I tell our managers that we really want to hire party throwers, not party goers, people that like really look out for other people. And that's, I think that's pretty hard to find these days, but we try really hard to hire the people, the people, and then enjoy taking care of people, and enjoy looking after people, and actually kind of revel in the hard work. So, the young kids these days, they get a bad rap, but I have found nothing but really great experiences with that demographic. And I mean, that's 21 years of working side by side with them, and it's still invigorating as I go into the stores and try to create like a really good experience, not only for our customers, but for our employees. It's a great place to work.
You were telling me about something you do you actually look for recognition opportunities for people where you think, oh boy, this person would really love X, and
Yeah.
tell us about one of those experiences with I think it was a guitar.
Yeah. Like my longtime COO, his name's Toby. We just opened a store way down in the bottom of the state. And every time you would visit the store, I mean, it's a 4-hour drive. Often it's a hotel stay away from his family. And, that was 4 or 5 months of traveling down there and getting a store open. And it was a real milestone for us to open in that area. And it's just been an absolute, barn burner down there. It's been great. But I don't interact with like all of, the 300 employees. There's oftentimes where I'll go in to a store and they don't know who I am and I've never met them. And if I'm not wearing a J-Dog, they're like, what can I get you, sir? And they'll try to like take my money and I just roll with it. I don't care. I'll order something. I'll give them my card and we'll have a good laugh afterwards. But my key people that I rub shoulders with every day, I actually keep on my phone in the notes tab as I'm actively listening to things that are going on in their life or things that maybe their partner, their spouse wish that they could do for, through, a trip or whatever. And I kind of make a note of it in my phone for, if a birthday came up or if a Christmas came up, or just, as you said, Joe, that random opportunity to give a gift. And I felt like that's been my greatest thing, is just those opportunities, those authentic times where I'm able, in the position I'm in. And I realize that doesn't pertain and it doesn't have to be big and grand, but just something that they care deeply about. And if I can help in any way of, my guy that was down there for 4 or 5 months and he came home, he loves to just go down in his basement at night and play music on a guitar. And I just know that he's had the same, okay guitar for a while. So I bought him a really great guitar and he was floored. And those things don't happen every day. And I can't do that for him all the time, but it's important to be mindful of like the things they really care about and do all you can to help them that way.
So, as you go around, I'm sure that you see sometimes problems or things that are going wrong in a location.
Yeah,
And occasionally you have to do some corrective behavior,
absolutely.
but what's the process of sort of, reinforcing and building positive momentum and recognition?
I love that. There are many times that I will travel. I'm just finishing a tour right now of all of our stores this week. As I've gone in and worked with the GMs and just observed, and I'm learning myself. There are many times I'm like, can you please show me how to do this? Because it's been a while since I've made a batch of French fries. I want to know how they're doing. But as I go in and I see things, one, I make a note of it in my phone. I'll either take a picture to remind me, or I'll write something in my notes tab. But I never do anything publicly. I never what's the word? What's the word, Joe? I don't fix anything publicly in front of them where it would have embarrassed them. Wait for an opportunity where I can kind of calm myself and think through it. And and a lot of times, Joe, I found that if somebody's doing something wrong, it's usually our fault that we haven't trained them properly.
Yeah.
Like they don't know or they don't care. And it's usually not that they don't care. It's they don't know, or they're scared or they're fearful of it. So those are pretty easy fixes. So I just kind of make sure that I'm in that right mindset. And then when things go great, you just praise the heck out of them, and you see it and you say it and you just praise it. And man, people's faces just really light up, especially the new employees, when like, oh, the boss, the owner's in here and he's like saw something that I did really, really well and he's saying something. I love being able to do that, but I do see that it's very beneficial in my line of work, because everybody honestly Joe, is just looking for validation, and they want to know that what they're doing is a good job.
Yeah.
And if they say otherwise, they're lying, or their mother just needs to tell them that they love them, like everyone just wants their mom to say, I love you, right? And that would just fix all the world's problems. When you see these grumpy guys on the news, I just tell my kids, that guy's mom he just needs to hear from his mom that she loves him. And like the world would be such a better place. So,
Okay.
I just feel like, Joe, I just look for the opportunities, and I'm not great at it, but I'm learning, but it goes a long way.
Well, you've built a great business based on wonderful food and recognition. So
Thank you.
congratulations with that. So let's summarize this a bit, and what are some tips for giving better recognition? Be specific. Describe specific event or action and its impact on you, the team, the organization, your customers. This drives home the importance to the person. And while appreciating feedback from peers, for most people, recognition from their immediate manager is most meaningful. Gallup did a survey where they said, whose recognition do you want the most? And the immediate manager was the most important, but the second one was Jayson. It was the CEO. They really want that. And when we looked at the data, it's those top management that they're not as effective at giving recognition. So,
Yeah.
top leaders, that really matters when you do it also. And recognizing outcomes is valuable, but recognizing the actions that led to the positive outcomes is also important. So what did you do to get you there, and what are the behaviors that really help? So tips on delivery. Some people do feel embarrassed being singled out publicly. Respect those who prefer recognition to be more private. And Jayson, you did a good job of describing what you do and kind of being really sensitive to both recognition and corrective notes. People appreciate notes and cards and things that like that. They save them. They have stories about them. We have a colleague in our organization, Michelle, and she makes her own cards. They're personal cards, and they're beautiful. She has actually in her home, she's created a room, which is the card making room.
That's cool.
And she has her own brand on it, which is really cool. But when you get a card from Michelle, it is special. And so you think about more notes, more personal notes. That's really kind of interesting and helpful. Timely recognition is important. The sooner you give recognition after the behavior, the higher it is perceived, the most value it has. And increasing the frequency of recognition will give you more chances to practice and improve this skill. And, making it more comfortable for the receiver to get appreciation. So think about those things. What I'd like you to do is set a goal. This is a little behavior with a huge impact. So as you read down through the list here, who went above and beyond, who exceeded expectations, delivered high quality, brought positive, and sometimes it doesn't have to be huge. It's like who provided steady, reliable support, who helped a teammate without being asked, who paid attention to detail. All these things really, recognize, you can't recognize too much, and it's important. So make a list of 5 people you ought to recognize today. And I've already started my list. Jayson, you probably are going to finish your list this afternoon. So an ending quote here: to recognize is to weave threads of encouragement into the fabric of everyday life. This is by Maya Thompson. Maya Thompson lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, and her good friend Taylor Swift wrote a song called Ronan about Thompson's young son who died of cancer. And so that's a pretty special quote from somebody who's really had some difficult times. All right. So Bree, any questions for Jayson or myself?
Yes. We had some good ones that we have a few minutes for. So, Tony asked, do you find that words are as effective as other things for rewarding staff? I work in government, so a lot of stuff comes out of my own pocket.
They're not giving away guitars, Jason.
No, they're not. No, Elon's gonna come after you if you do. So, I honestly, I think words are nice. Handwritten card, well, it's like a handwritten note or even like a text message or a simple call. Like there are often times where I'll just call somebody if I'm traveling. I'm like, who do I need to call and talk to? I'll just call and say thank you or notice something that they did, and they're almost taken a little back there. And it's I don't know. I feel like that's a big lift and a simple way to get to do that.
You know, the ones we love the most oftentimes don't get as much of the,
Yeah.
our spouses, our kids,
Right.
boy, they really, there's a great opportunities, but oftentimes we overlook that. So,
Yeah.
boy, a card could really do a wonderful job on your spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people get in their daily routines of all these things we have to do that stopping and taking the time to recognize is really powerful. Okay,
Right.
another one that came up was, where do you stand on the employees really wanting appreciation, not recognition debate?
Mm.
Kind of looking at appreciation and recognition as different things.
Yeah. Jason, any insights
Just
there?
like what do you from that? I'm sure you couldn't ask, but Joe, do you have any insight on the difference between appreciation and recognition, just to try to help me like what that difference would be?
I think some people think of recognition as a kind of a reward, something that's physical, something, that's tangible, versus just, gosh, I really appreciate what you've done.
Yeah.
Just that sincere thanks and
Yeah.
appreciation. Now, okay, it's interesting. We do some awards here, and like our tenure awards and stuff like that. They really matter to people. They put them up in their house, and they matter to me too, because I kind of like them. I look at them once in a while, and when my grandkids come by, they go, "What's this award?"
Very true.
I kind of lean on the appreciation over the recognition. Just personally, I just like it just feels more heartfelt to me. And I've never really gotten any like a recognition award, but like when I get like appreciated, it's just like wow, someone just you feel seen and validated, and that's just nice for me, and that's all honestly that I need. But I realize that everybody's different, but I would err on the side of appreciation.
We had a great comment from Melinda who said, yes, I presented on this. Recognition is often outcome based, while appreciation centers in on effort and progress. I thought that was a
Wow,
great
I
insight.
like
Thank
that.
you, Melinda. One last question. As an individual contributor, how can you help your supervisor and leaders be more aware of the rewards of recognition for their employees?
I think a lot of times you'll see stuff that I don't see. They'll see things I don't see. And luckily I have great people that, kind of, hey, did you know? Did you know how long blah blah blah, how much effort it took to get this done? Or, so gosh, I really appreciate that. And because I don't see it, I don't know what's going on. I I remember when I went on I used to travel an awful lot, and I came back into town, and I something terrible had happened to one of our employees, but I didn't know anything about it, and it's like, I really felt like I was in a tough situation there until somebody came up and said, "Hey, by the way, you need to know this." So that that's so helpful to managers and to supervisors.
Yeah. I would just say, and this is my unscientific kind of mere bachelor degree answer, but for me, it's just about modeling it. Like just kind of walk the walk. If you talk, you got to walk the walk and just model the behavior. And, you know, that'll probably take a lot of time to catch on, but you really have to be the example. And if you want this culture in your, I mean, culture is going to happen regardless if you do it or you don't. And you're always going to get some sort of culture. And it can be great culture, it can be bad culture. But the things that you hold dear, you have to model and let people see it.
Yeah. Thank you all for your questions. If we didn't get them to them today, we will be sure to answer them by email. Thank you, Jayson and Joe. These were really valuable insights about appreciation, about recognition, all of it. So we want to provide you all with an opportunity to experience a little bit more about this leadership process that we have at Zenger Folkman. So throughout the year, we host different live online public workshops of our extraordinary leader development experience. And we have one coming up in July. So you can visit our website for more information about that. Also, we have research, blogs, podcasts, and more information on different webinar topics that we've done. Now, like we said, we love to hear your feedback, good and bad. Do you appreciate us? But and how we want to show how grateful we are for you filling out our survey at the end is we want to enter you into a drawing to win a $25 Amazon gift card to buy yourself something cool. And so you can take our exit survey. If you look in the webinar chat, you can click on that link, or at the end of this webinar, it will populate. So please fill that out. Let us know a little bit more about what you thought about this webinar. And we hope you come back next month to our next webinar. We have something very exciting we'll be announcing in that webinar, so be sure to look out for it. Thanks for joining us today.